So I've stayed mostly quiet about this Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power show that's coming on Amazon up until this point, because really there's just a lot of chatter about it online, and I didn't feel like I had anything new to add to the conversation. But as I saw the new trailer, which had dropped today, a couple weeks before the series is supposed to premiere on Amazon at the time of this recording, I did have a question that I needed answered, and we're going to get to that, but let's go ahead and talk about this series first, and kind of lead into my thought process a bit. So first off, this is supposed to take place in the Lord of the Rings world, the world of the Silmarillion, which takes place a heck of a long time, I think 1,000 years or so before the Lord of the Rings. Now, I read the Silmarillion way back in high school. It's been a long time, but I'm already noticing quite a few differences between this show and the Silmarillion that I remember. This doesn't look like Tolkien's world to me, and we'll talk about that in a second. But one of the big departures I saw from the Silmarillion was that this show features hobbits, or as they call them in this show, hardfoots. Now, in the Silmarillion, there were no hobbits, either because they just weren't around, or they were always there, but nobody knew they existed because they were just kind of in their shire, and nobody had really found them yet. So either way, that's already a departure. And the studio, as people started pointing out more and more differences from the source material and the show, walked it back and said, yeah, this isn't going to be the Silmarillion. It's going to be its own, unique thing, but it's still Tolkien's world. So that to me already doesn't make a lot of sense. It's okay, yeah, we're going to take this established lore, this established world, but we're going to do something totally new that you've never seen before. It's really weird, which brings me to my next point, which is, and there's no really easy way to say this without pissing a bunch of people off, so I'm very sorry, that's not my intent, but this show is diverse for diversity's sake. I mean, it's like they just do a census to make sure that they get as much representation in, regardless of the fact that it doesn't resemble the world that Tolkien created, which is a world that's based on Northern European / Norse society and mythologies. So yeah, there's not going to be a lot of diversity of skin tone out there, and to implement it or to import it in just makes it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look like the world that Tolkien had created. And if you're going to be faithful to his creation and try to recreate his world, then you've got to stick to that tenet. And yeah, I know there's a double standard, and it's fair to say if I was going to go ahead and remake a Black Panther movie and then have Ryan Gosling play Black Panther, yeah, you would have a world of people coming down on you, whereas if you were to reverse the races, and obviously like when you have an African-American play the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four, it's stunning and brave, but reverse that, and it's just straight racism. It's a double standard. It's terrible. Hollywood needs to get off this because it is just ruining escapist entertainment for everybody. Everybody can be represented. Everybody can be, fairly shown, but at the same time, let's cast appropriate and accurate people for appropriate and accurate roles. Good Lord, this isn't that hard, and it's just really aggravating to a lot of people. And also talking about just departures from the source material, let's look at Galadriel. So Galadriel in this new show, she's kind of the lead character from what I can tell from the previews. And she's just kind of this Xena warrior princess, generic Red Sonja lady warrior type with a sword. And which I find is an odd choice, because if you look at Galadriel from any bit of source material you'll ever see her in, that's nothing like her character. It's more than a departure. It's a complete reinvention to where it's not even the same character at all. Now, in the Galadriel that we all know, of course, she's this regal and wise monarch. She doesn't use a sword because she really doesn't have to. She either knows how to avoid a fight, she knows how to cripple an enemy with her words, or even better yet, she knows when a fight doesn't need to be fought at all. And if push comes to shove, and she really does need to get into the action, she is one of the most feared and powerful people in Middle-earth. So the fact that she would just trounce you down with a sword and armor is absolutely ridiculous when she's got this amount of power at her disposal. I mean, it's almost character assassination to my point, because you've taken this fascinating character and you've boiled her down to a generic knight in shining armor. And why do they do that? Let's not mince words about this. We know why they did it. They did it because this is masculine, and they don't want a feminine female character leading their show, because for whatever reason, in their creatively bankrupt minds, they can't conceive that a regal queen character in her finery and her dresses, using her intellect, her words, and her skills to to frankly go out there and kick ass is as compelling as just grabbing a sword, putting on armor, and just going and hitting something or stabbing something. That's the level of creativity and intellect that we're dealing with from this show. I just had gotten to watch the new Game of Thrones, The House of the Dragon. This is going to bring me to the crux of the question as I give a little mini pseudo review here. I actually thought this was a pretty decent show and reminded me a lot of old school Game of Thrones, which I was happy to see, despite it having some smash the patriarchy vibes definitely to it, as we're dealing with the first female to be the heir to the Iron Throne in the House of Targaryen. Now, that's already dealing with the theme that we're seeing in this Lord of the Rings show, which is going to be women rising to power, the men that want to stop them. In the Lord of the Rings show, it's very apparent by the previews that Galadriel is aware of these coming dark times, and she's trying to fight to prevent it, while male characters like Elrod is trying to convince her that she's out of her mind, she needs to hang up her sword. I don't know why. I mean, it's not like she's getting on in years. She's immortal. But nevertheless, that's kind of the theme of the show. Whereas in the House of the Dragon, she's a princess, but at the same time, there's no question in the little you get to know about this character by what she's gone through in her life, how she's been able to compose herself through all the tragedy in her world, and her issues with her father and everything else, that she is a strong and powerful character, and somebody who, if push comes to shove, has the resources available to defend herself if need be, not necessarily through her personally, but for the fact that she commands the loyalty of her guard, she commands the loyalty of people around her, and when she's ultimately named the heir to the Iron Throne, there's no indication that the kingdom has any hesitation to accept her as their ruler. So she's won the respect of her peers in her court. And if you look at the cast, which I've got here up on the screen, it's a diverse cast, male, females, races, everything else. And that's because this is Westeros. And Westeros is a world that we're familiar with. And we know in Westeros that there are these diverse races. We know in Westeros that we've seen queens and we've seen female monarchs. And if you can look at a character like Daenerys Targaryen and think that a woman can only be cool if she's in armor, in the trenches, getting muddy and fighting, then you haven't been paying attention to Game of Thrones, or maybe you just paid attention to the last couple episodes. I don't know. But the point of the world, or the point of the matter is, and this brings me to my question, is if this is the world you want to create, why go to Lord of the Rings? As we've established, you can take a fantasy world and you can put all the representation, all the diversity, all the gender messaging, all the sexism and gender messaging you want out there, because it's your world and you created it. Why not build a new world where this stuff is just there and then the audience accepts it? Why are you going to take a world that just isn't the way that your vision, that your creative vision is pulling you, and just try to force it into your mold? And I know part of the answer to that is going to be, well, because The Lord of the Rings already has a built-in fan base and it's the name recognition is going to bring people in. But is it going to do that? Or are you just going to piss off those fans because you're going to give them a world that doesn't look like the world that they know and that they've loved all these years? You're not going to give them what their fandom has been following. And there's already been the articles written about toxic fandom and how the Lord of the Rings fans are now the most they've dethroned the Star Wars fans as the most toxic fans on the internet. And you know what, to you, I say screw you. You've created a product that by all accounts is just a bait and switch, Lord of the Rings in name only type of a show. This isn't what a Lord of the Rings fan is going to want to see. I mean, if you took the Bridgerton from Netflix, so I'm going to make a Bridgerton show, but it's going to be set still in ancient or in old-timey England, but we're going to go ahead and focus on American revolutionaries having a tobacco trade through the East Indian canals, and it's really going to have nothing to do with courtships and dances and ladies and lords. Then the fans of Bridgerton are going to revolt, and well, they should, because that's not the show that they signed up to watch. Just like this isn't the show that they signed up to watch. And the more you put out there, and the more you're showing that you're going to push agenda over story, and you're going to push message over characters, and you're going to put diversity over authenticity, then the more fans are going to revolt against you, because that's not the Lord of the Rings that they like, and that's not the Lord of the Rings that they want to see. So you're just wasting your money. I really don't understand what you're doing. I don't get who this show is made for, because it's certainly not made for Tolkien fans. If you want to create a generic sci or fantasy world, make a generic fantasy world. It's been done. Game of Thrones has shown it can be done. And it can be done well, and it can be done successful. But the problem with doing it is you need creativity. You need to have the wherewithal, and you need to have the backbone to be able to world build. Go out there and take your own original ideas and test them out in the world to see if it's something that the fan base truly wants. Or if you're going to take your precious creation out there and get your feelings hurt because when it's shown into the light of day, it's rejected. And that's really the crux behind this. This is why you don't see people coming out here with their own ideas. They have all these messages, they have all these thoughts, they have all these plans on how the world should be, but they never want to go out there and show it to you. They don't want to create their own example, their own vision. They don't want to manifest it out there into media, into real tangible, something that everybody else can see and enjoy, because they are afraid, and they probably know that their own creative interpretation is not strong enough to stand up against the scrutiny of an audience. And it's just frankly cowardice, it's laziness, and I just have no more time for it. I really don't. I mean, there's plenty of, as much as people love to complain about the state of entertainment today, there really is, if you look for it, plenty of very good, very well written, very well established, new, original things out there that we can enjoy. And honestly, if you're a writer in that world and you want to push forth whatever your agenda is, you can do it in your world, because it's your world and you get to make the rules. You don't get to take somebody else's sandbox, tear down their sandcastle and just replace it with a mound of manure. That's not your right as a creator. And it's time we as fans get offended by this and just turn away from it. I'm sure this Lord of the Rings show is going to have a butt ton of views in its first week on the air. I think the premiere is going to draw everybody in, but I don't think it's for the reasons they want. It's because we're going to be watching to see how bad it really truly can be. Maybe it'll surprise us and maybe it'll be good. I see absolutely no evidence to that, though. And the more they show, the more certain I am that this is going to be rank. And it still just leaves me the question of why. Why do this when you had the insane budget that this show commands to make your own product, your own fantasy world, your own characters, and you could have done whatever you want with it and it would have been fine and we would have accepted it. Everyone would have accepted it, because it's not a world that we have input in. If we don't like it, we don't give it our fandom. If we love it, then we do, just like we have everything else. But hey, that's just kind of my opinion. I want to know what you guys think. Let's talk about this in the comments below. Are you excited for the Rings of Power? Do you think it's going to be an absolute train wreck? Let me know. And when you're down there, do all the usual stuff. Hit like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. I'd love to have you here. This was kind of a rambly type of a video, because really, it's just a rant. I saw this preview, and this question popped into my head of why even make this show if you clearly don't like Tolkien's world. It's baffling to me. It really is. It really does just perplex me, and I'd really like to know anybody's theories on that. So let's talk about it in the comments below. That's all I've got for today. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.